Ethiopia. A country emerging from the horrors of famine and war. British volunteers, many of them teachers, have joined VSO in an effort to transform the school system. Not by teaching children, but by training teachers. Yet, in the face of harsh economic reality, can VSO really help satisfy Ethiopia's hunger to learn? Monday morning, Addis Ababa, capital of Ethiopia. Everywhere you look, there are people. Addis is one of Africa's largest cities, boasting a population of over 3 million, most of whom seem constantly on the move. As the city bustles into life, 11-year-old Abraham and his friend 12-year-old Wendwassen are on the streets, doing what they do every day before and after school: shine shoes.
I have only just one brush. Me, I don't have a brown and a black brush. I have just one black brush.
Abraham and Wendwassen work not only to survive, but to pay for the things they need to go to school, like paper, pens, and uniform.
Look at my shoes, is broken. Look at his shoes and my shoes is broken, like that. The uniform and the trouser and the coat is 100 birr.
100 birr is equivalent to about £6, or shining 100 pairs of shoes. The shoeshine boys are not alone. Across Ethiopia, children can be seen everywhere. In the markets, the fields, on the streets, all working to gain access to something that children of a similar age in England take for granted: an education.
We need more school.
More school, more.
We are big, like.
You want to go to more school? You think
Yeah.
you don't have enough school?
Yeah.
Ethiopia is an old country going through the trauma of rebirth. Decades of war and poverty have swept away the past and left in its place a determination to build a better future. Ethiopians who once suffered famine now have a hunger to learn.
We cannot do anything without education. It's obvious. Education makes the man perfect. The man or the society gets new ideas, new systems, new things from the world. We can't read without education. We can't do any electronics without education. Even it is necessary to follow the land, education is necessary.
There's certainly no shortage of schools. But what kind of teaching do they offer? Ethiopian primary education starts at age 7 and lasts until 15. It's delivered in 2 cycles, marked by 2 sets of national exams. The government has pledged to provide primary school places for all by 2015. Helping the government's educational effort? VSO. For the past 5 years, this busy office in downtown Addis is the command and control centre for a national operation.
Yeah, in that area, we need a volunteer to run that course.
On the wall, a campaign map reveals how big the VSO programme is. Over 100 volunteers from 10 nations, including Britain. The volunteers are not here to teach children. Instead, VSO is working to facilitate a sea change in the hearts and minds of those who deliver the education system in Ethiopia. It's doing it by introducing elements of teaching practice that teachers in England take for granted. Many British volunteers are education professionals. Retired MFL teacher Judith Altschul has been here over 3 years, long enough for a picture to fade. She's helped develop the English language curriculum.
The government talk about attitudinal change, and they want the students to have modern attitudes and yet to maintain their traditional beliefs and customs. So in the curriculum, we are conscious that we must always frame it in the Ethiopian context.
Not all volunteers are retired. LEA consultant Beverly Minette took a career break to help design Ethiopia's new teacher training program.
This initiative, really, to bring people of my age and experience here is a new initiative for VSO, because they intend to work more strategically and at policy level. And by just ad hoc placing teachers in schools and expecting them to be able to share their skills isn't always effective and wasn't always effective.
The VSO contribution begins in the Ministry of Education. Here, volunteers advise on ways to broaden the school experience, giving advice on curriculum development and school improvement, and perhaps most radically, designing and delivering teacher training programs. As such, this puts VSO in a close advisory relationship with the government. Not always a comfortable place to be. In 2005, anti-government demonstrations following a general election were brutally suppressed.
The government reacted over-violently to any protesters, and volunteers witnessed on university campuses federal police entering the campuses, taking their colleagues away. From the VSO office in Addis Ababa, staff witnessed police shooting into the backs of demonstrators.
In the outcry which followed, volunteers questioned VSO's continued presence in the country.
The answer that I made to the volunteers, and the answer that I still believe in today, is that this government is putting a lot of resources into education. Its vision of education is one that VSO can share. There are going to be setbacks short term, and the government should be held to account for those, and people have to remain critical, but I don't think the long-term goals should be lost sight of at the same time.
In the end, the volunteers stayed on. The challenge they face is enormous. They must work with scarce resources to help modernize the education system from top to bottom. This is where education is traditionally carried out in Ethiopia, in church. For hundreds of years, Ethiopia's education was run by the priests and imams of the numerous churches and mosques that dot the landscape of this still devout country. Traditional education is a matter of learning prayers and church ritual by rote, learning obedience to adult authority, developing a sense of personal morality. Small wonder that child-centered teaching is not an easy sell. Volunteers can sometimes meet resistance from a surprising source: the teachers themselves.
Well, I think the teacher is meant to ask questions to which they know the answer, and this is the formula in the classroom. And so one of the things we're trying to bring in is this problem solving, the questioning, the opening up of the possibility that teacher might not know something that the student wants to know, and that the student is going to have to find another way of finding out the answer.
For Ethiopian education, it's a revolutionary concept. Getting teachers to embrace it means returning to the classroom. This is a training session in the VSO-inspired Higher National Diploma. The diploma is the key qualification for those who do teacher training.
Teacher educators attend 2 2-hour sessions per week. They are involved in 4 major modules throughout the diploma itself.
Most of these will sound familiar to teachers in England. Continuous assessment, the reflective teacher, action research. But the 4th is particularly special for Ethiopia. Traditional Ethiopian education is a sedentary experience. The Higher National Diploma has introduced an active learning approach that VSO volunteers hope teachers will use in their lessons. To ensure that the new methods are actually implemented, VSO is also helping to develop a school improvement program. Instead of league tables and school inspections, schools evaluate themselves via a questionnaire, designed under the guidance of former Ofsted inspector Sally Hanford.
There's about over 160 criteria divided into teaching and learning. And the main part of that is to encourage schools to look at teacher training, teacher professionalism and professional development, which can be done within the school.
Devising appropriate criteria presented Hanford with a unique set of challenges.
We had real problems about something like, does the school have values and beliefs? I mean, we use that term in England very loosely. Try and explain the difference between values and beliefs. It's quite difficult, and in the end we've junked beliefs and kept to values, which is got more of a moral sense to it than beliefs, which here is tied up with the religion.
Improving standards, training of teacher educators, it all sounds very impressive. But how can training alone solve the school system's biggest problem? A chronic lack of resources. In Addis Ababa, this is where primary-age shoeshine boys Abraham and Wendossen go to school.
That is my classroom over there.
Up there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And how many people are at the school?
In my class,
Yeah.
there's 42.
42 in your class?
Yeah, in my class. Come on, I'll show you my class.
The building is new. It's part of a massive school construction program, 2,000 primary schools built since 1996. But the classrooms have an unfinished air about them.
And where do you sit in the class?
I sit here. Here.
When something gets damaged, it doesn't get fixed. Even the teacher's desk.
Because it's broken. And also this one is broken.
Yet the timetable is broad.
Monday morning, 1 period is Amharic, 2 period is biology, 3 period is mathematics, 4 period is physics.
And the teaching is effective. The boys both speak English. They take pride in their work.
This one is for my text. This one is, physics for 10-8.
Conditions are tough enough in Addis, yet in many rural areas they're tougher still. To help quench Ethiopia's thirst for knowledge, VSO is taking its model of teacher development from the towns out into the country. To see how VSO's teacher development program is working means moving out of Addis Ababa. The road that runs north from Addis climbs high through mountain scenery. Here, the landscape takes on a somewhat Mediterranean appearance, until something reminds you that you are definitely in Africa. Two of the 100 or so VSO volunteers working in Ethiopia know this road all too well. Jill Bradley is a retired primary head. Her colleague, Orla McCarthy, is a young primary teacher on sabbatical. Bradley and McCarthy are based 200 miles north of Addis in the regional market town of Dessie. The town is over 2,000 metres above sea level. At this altitude, a brisk walk leaves visitors short of breath. Local people, however, seem unaffected. The streets are busy enough, but the activity is deceptive. Dessie is the poorest town in Ethiopia, which means it's one of the very poorest in all Africa. As Bradley and McCarthy have found, poverty impacts directly on education in a number of ways. The first is enrolment.
There are a lot of problems for children in Ethiopia coming to school. They have to travel like huge distances to school on foot, and for the girls, they're needed in the home. Also, just at the harvest season, market days, having to bring the cows to the water and look after sick parents and things like that mean that a lot of children end up dropping out early from school or missing huge portions of school.
Next to the market stands Robert Primary School, home to more than 1,300 7 to 15-year-olds. When VSO got here in 2002, attendance was patchy. School resources nearly non-existent. This was the kind of classroom scene that greeted Bradley and McCarthy. The pupils crammed together in rows, no books, hardly any paper, bare walls bereft of learning materials. To buy pens and paper, pupils must grow and sell vegetables from the school garden. School supervisor Tecleus Michael coordinates the effort.
What you have seen before, the garden, we are planting vegetables there, and we try to sell and get money from there. We use the money in order to give some support with the stationery, exercise book, pen, and so forth.
But the school is undergoing a transformation, one that has sprung from an idea introduced by VSO: clustering.
Clustering is a novel idea. It's very interesting because we can share manpower within the member of cluster schools. We can share materials, so it's helpful.
Where once volunteers had to travel from school to supervise training and teacher development, teachers now come to them at Dessie's College of Teacher Education. The cluster system is based on the hub scheme used in some English schools to share sports facilities.
Schools are put together in a group, so there might be 4 or 5 schools together in a group, and they shouldn't be too far away from each other, the schools. And then they choose one school that is kind of central to the other schools, and they make that the cluster resource centre, or the central school, where the training will take place and the meetings take place.
But in Ethiopia, clustering works at a much more intimate level.
In England, the clusters tend to be bigger. They'll tend to be the whole town or, and the surrounding area, so that it is quite a large number of schools being involved. And they don't really share their facilities so much. They might share the swimming pool if they've got one, but they're not sharing such small things as a computer or something like that.
Clustering has helped relieve the shortage of learning materials. schools are sharing their sources of supply and channeling them into a media bank at DES's cluster's designated centre, Robert School.
Students, teachers are trying to collect different materials from the shops, from the market areas, from their home. By bringing this, we are trying to make medias.
Every item that might possibly have a use is carefully collected and stored. Even materials that in England would be tossed aside after a term are used and reused. Teachers sign out materials for specific lessons and are careful to return them. After setting up the cluster, classrooms began to change in appearance. Walls were decorated with teaching aids and examples of the children's work. Some members of staff became convinced that, as in other countries, revamping classes would boost morale both of pupils and of teachers.
If we have an active classroom, then we have an active teacher there, and at the same time we have an active students here.
But given the range of challenges facing the school, not everyone agreed.
If there is a new thing, always there is a resistance. So teachers are not interested to decorate. They are looking as a decoration, you see.
Some teachers were worried that changing the classroom would threaten the comfort zone of traditional teaching.
Who can read markets?
The attitude of the teachers was a big challenge to us because they want to deliver only lecture method. And even in assessment, they want to assess their students only in written work.
So began a lengthy process involving VSO volunteers practicing a bit of active learning on the teachers themselves.
The volunteers are organizing a model class in the Teacher Training College. We first see the model classroom there, and we get training from the VSO volunteers and the college as well.
He was bitten by an insect.
Experience in the model class had a drip effect on staff in cluster schools.
There are different materials there, different media there, so they can touch, look, see, discuss. Other teachers are observing this, so they will transfer the idea to the other classes.
Decorating classroom walls with learning media may seem like a small step, but such small steps can become giant leaps for education in Ethiopia.
Teachers are coming back to say that when they make the changes in their classrooms, they are seeing a better attendance rate and they are seeing less students being absent and more students staying on longer in school.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon, teacher.
Excellent English. Well done.
The cluster is now being enlarged to include the local kindergartens. Early years teachers have come to the College of Teacher Education to attend a demonstration lesson given in English by volunteers Bradley and McCarthy.
Show me.
Here they take the class through an early years staple: heads, shoulders, knees and toes.
Show me your head. Show me your ears. Show me.
Bradley and McCarthy have designed the course themselves, a procedure that may surprise teachers in England.
I think when we were coming first, we didn't think that maybe we'd be able for designing training courses because it wasn't something that either of us had done. But actually, everything that you know already is enough to do here because they're just not used to active learning methods and they're not used to involving the children in the lesson and planning and things like that. So just simple things that like any teacher at home would be able to do is enough to design a training course here.
Yeah. And you are the children now.
For too long, kindergarten has been the Cinderella of Ethiopia's programme of educational reform.
Anything they have to buy themselves. They're given the building, the children come, they've got some play equipment like a slide or a roundabout or something. No papers, no pencils, nothing to make equipment with. And they earn very little, and yet they'll buy their own equipment.
But Bradley and McCarthy feel it's time for a change.
The early years are really important for education, and the better foundation that the children can get before they go to school, the more likely they are to stay in school. And I think if the kindergartens are developed and strengthened, then the children may stay in school later.
VSO training is now beginning to bear fruit in Des's nursery schools. Classrooms decorated with media, teachers interacting with children, and children learning in a way that would once have been unheard of in Ethiopia, through play. If active learning can instill a love of learning in the early years, these children may have a future that their parents and grandparents could hardly have dreamt of. Four million Ethiopian children still do not attend school. By focusing on teacher training as a key means of improving standards of teaching and learning, VSO is beginning to make a difference.